World-renowned human performance expert, executive coach, best-selling author.
And I want to congratulate Ron Kardashian.
Over 12,000 hours of one-on-one coaching and mentorship.
He's a health and cognitive expert.
Known as a spiritual confidant to respected industry leaders. CEO of 3 companies.
Coach and minister Ron Kardashian.
Good friend, Coach Ron Kardashian.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Always Winning in Leadership. I'm Tim Boyko, and I have with me the executive coach, Ron Kardashian, also the CEO and founder of Hire. And we are continuing the wonderful conversation that we started last week on new year, new mindset. You want to go another level, you have to have a new mindset. And so continuing with this conversation, we'll go in with, here's Coach Ron.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for always doing a good intro. Mics are good. Everything's good. I know we got our wonderful Curtis, who's always here online. Hey, Curtis, if you're here, give us a thumbs up. Welcome to everybody else who's here. Man, we made it through 26. Boy, don't get me started on my Bitcoin account, though. I'm still frustrated with that.
You mean
but I do have high.
Huh?
What's that, Tim?
You said we made it through 26. I'm like, no, we're to 26.
Oh, yeah, 25. That's right. See what I mean? I'm already a year. We're already a year in advance booking, right now. But yes, we made it through 25 for the record. Something kind of funny. Last year, I was talking to my little girl. I think this was about maybe more like 2 or 3 years ago. She just turned 21, and I said, well, what do you want for your birthday, sweetheart? She goes, a Bitcoin account. I'm like, wow, boy, times have changed, haven't they, Tim?
I just wanted a sled.
Whatever happened to good old-fashioned Barbie dolls,
Yes.
Oh, new year, new mindset. I want to talk to you guys about the science of breaking old patterns. But let me preface this by saying, as we have evolved, we as a people are increasing knowledge. Okay. There's a famous biblical passage that says knowledge will increase in the land. We've started through congruent eras, right? We were in an industrial era way back, right? Then we moved into a manufacturing era. Then we moved into a technology era. We're moving into a new era called AI era. And how I want you to frame some of our subject matter is that there's a higher dimension of doing things. It doesn't mean that it's wrong or you have to understand it. You're learning adaptation. Adaptation. Write down this word because this is a key fundamental for you to go easy on yourself, reducing anxiety and breaking these old cycles that have repeated themselves. When you have context and knowledge, it brings peace. I'll give you a really good example of this. I'm working with a client right now, client/patient, right? Some of them are patients. Severe stage of pancreatic cancer, gastric bypass, tumor over the pancreas. I mean, this was fatal. She's having anaphylactic shock concerning this new medication. Doctors can't be found. She's in the ER, Tim. We talked about this. She doesn't even have enough strength to push the button. Who does she call? She calls me. Wow. And in about 30 seconds, I was able to assess that she was having a hex, what we call a hex, short for a reaction to the onset of the antibiotic. And as a result, her whole back, Tim, was starting to feel like she was freezing. And the words out of her mouth literally were, I know that I'm about to die right now. I mean, you can't get any more critical than that type of a phone call. Wow. Because of my background and because I knew what was going on, I knew she was having an adverse reaction because it was 45 minutes after she had taken the antibiotic. And 1 30-second word to her, this is not the end for you. This is the onset of the medication. Her heightened awareness or her emotional dysregularity was at 100. It came down to a 2. Wow. And she's all, thank you. Knowledge is very much so power. And just because you can't understand it doesn't mean it doesn't work. So I want to outline a concise enough message for our LinkedIn audience because this is a deep request. I want to give you an easy to use neurological and spiritual prescription for breaking cycles and winning over anxiety or fear or frustration. Because the worst thing you can do is bring old patterns into a new room. Right, Tim?
Yeah.
We're notorious for saying this.
That's it.
Old behaviors into a new room.
Yeah.
And I'd like you to make a short list of all the things, not just that you're going to achieve in the new year, but make a list of all the things you're going to leave behind. Judgmentalism, being too hard on yourself, um, uh, situational anxiety. In other words, I'm not going to let myself be so stirred up if someone's got an opinion. We're all going through this. Everybody's going through this. Anybody who has a vision and a dream is going to be psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, and maybe even physically attacked, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing threats all over the nation. We're seeing patterns of people. Last night, this famous Hollywood director's son, the son killed the two parents.
Wow. Wow.
We're in a very volatile time, and as we increase with knowledge, the key is to stay up on it so you can have adaptation.
Yes.
And adaptation's a powerful word. We coach it here through not only IQ, EQ, emotional intelligence, but AQ, adaptability quotient. Right, Tim?
And that's a new one. You don't hear that talked about, the adaptability quotient.
I
I
know.
learned that from you. And the power of making a short list. Do this because
Yeah.
you have to get it out of your system, written down. And I'm old fashioned paper.
Yeah, that's fine. I got my iPad right here, bought the new big one, ready to go.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I take mine when I write the list to leave behind, I write them down and then I tear them up because they're
That's good.
behind. They're gone.
That's good.
And
That's a prophetic act, by the way. When you're doing this, psychologists teach this. We teach this in our center here in Silicon Valley, and that's a really good point, Tim.
yeah, because you
Yeah.
gotta get that mindset that there's something about the physical when you rip it up and leave it behind.
Yeah.
Wow, it's like
Yeah.
it's gone. I am free. Those chains, those links, busted, gone.
I'll give you a really good example of this. Speaking of chain, my daughter in high school had this friend who positioned herself as just this wonderful person, a teenager going through this, which I'm helping a lot of our executives actually handle in-home situations because emotional regulation in the home front, or we call it the bedroom to the boardroom concept, is very much a dynamic parallel because if the amygdala, fight, fight, or freeze, is so active at home, you're going to bring that culture, or really the atmosphere. You're an atmosphere. You walk into a company that's a culture, you're going to bring those epigenetics with you. You're going to bring that programming in. And so I sat down with my daughter as this girl turned on her. Long story short, she had given her this necklace that my daughter was very endearing to her. But the escalation of this little girl became hateful. I mean, we're talking about slander, we're talking about abuse, we're talking about defamation, we're talking about, very disgruntled emotional issues. Coincidentally, the little girl was going through some horrific things, domestic violence at her home, but the school wasn't doing anything about it. And so she brought me this necklace, and she's all, this girl gave it to me, but I'm not feeling comfortable wearing it at school anymore because she actually made fun of it and she started to use it against her. I said, I want you to grab that chain and I want you to pull it right off your neck. And I said, I want you to breathe first before we do this. This is not hate towards her. It's a release for yourself. Because I'm also training my daughter how to process hate or defamation or haters or any disgruntled. You could do this at your office. If there's someone who's very jealous of you and they keep, throwing these tones or these words or these insinuations, this was a prophetic act. And I said, now save that as a memory and speak love over the situation, because we're trying to teach the next generation how not to develop animosity, because this is a very real thing. 90% of thoughts are repeated from the previous day. Harvard study showed this. So if you're teaching her how to, kind of a low level thinking is, oh, you be the boss, you don't deserve this SHI, you are, just take that girl to school, teach her all of that is dysregulating emotional presence on the earth. So we got to start with our children. Not saying that you're teaching them to be a pushover. No, I'm teaching her to take authority and dominion over her own thoughts, because thoughts are things.
Yes.
Tim, here's the core truth in this session. People don't fail because they lack desire. They fail because their brain hasn't updated a new rhythm. So I was teaching my daughter a new rhythm. That make sense?
That's exactly it.
Right?
And that new rhythm is tied to, well, I'll throw it as a question. The rhythm of how you value yourself
Yes.
is where you're going to flow. It's where the cycle of thoughts will flow tied to your rhythm. I'm sorry, tied to your value that's causing the rhythm. And as you
kind of the
as
same
you
thing.
increase your value of yourself, that's why I reached out to you as a client.
That's right.
It's like I valued myself to invest in me, to elevate. And when you elevate your own value, the rhythms coming out of you and how you think, the rhythms of those thought processes are going up,
That's
going
it.
higher, thinking at
That's
higher
it.
dimensions, solving bigger problems, advancing bigger ideas and concepts in society and in your community.
That's right. That's right. And I think that's an important point, because the right questions, higher dimensional questions, yield higher dimensional answers. So you are seeking learned experts like myself, and if it's not me, get a coach this year,
Yeah.
somebody that is operating on a level of neuroscience and spiritual aptitude that can actually elevate you. I've read over 500-600 books. The Bible itself has 66 books in it alone. I want to challenge you, start reading. I am reading more than I've ever have concerning these neuroscience pathways, and there's pathogens that lace your body, outside influences, whether they're stressors or anxiety or fear, that actually change your biology. So what I'm teaching you is not just hypothetical nostalgia. This is not a feel good. This is practical application, proven data that supports your new initiatives. Why most people repeat last year. Anxiety is the brain's predictor area. It expects old outcomes. That's what it does. The limbic system prefers familiar pain over unfamiliar progress. The body is wired this way. So if you don't have interrupters, training, coaching, progressiveness, you plateau. Life experiences may throw you a bone here and there. Oh, I got a promotion. Oh, I got this. But I'm dealing with people that want the top. They want the fullness of life. They want joy unspeakable. They want wealth to help others. I was talking to a gentleman the other day who said, I just, I was asking him his financial goals. He hired us as a coach, which to your point, was an investment in himself. He goes, I finally feel like I'm finally worth investing in me. For many years, I felt like there was no way I can spend any money on me. But then he followed it with this statement that I recognized was a limiting belief. Not always, but in his case, it was. He said, I just need enough money for myself. And we began the discussion, which actually intrigued him about my work, was that, how are you doing so much charity work? You have a nonprofit, you're digging wells.
Yep.
I said, because my limiting belief is not just making enough for me. That's for me, that was actually a selfish statement. I could not break out of my financial attraction until I broke the limiting belief of what is enough. So now we've set a goal, 26 goals. We want to dig another. I think we dug 10 wells last year. I want to dig 25 this year. I want to be able to pay for my little girl's college, lock, stock, and barrel, which I already have saved. I want to be. Maybe we pay for another kid's college. Maybe we donate. We're already doing it. We're working with this new nonprofit organization called Every Student Sent, where they help kids transition at college.
Yeah.
Enough said. You hear what I'm saying. I want to get into this. I want you to set the tone for, you guys get the picture of this. Sometimes I want to create storytelling, because it's also a picture of how you need to talk to yourself, right? You need to give yourself proper adaptation
Yes.
in order to acclimate to new realms of development. So let's talk about this, because this year won't change until your mind does, period. It won't change until your mind does. Okay.
Right.
Let's talk about the neurology of old patterns. Number one, we talked last week about predictive coding. The brain expects more of what it has seen. Write this down. I have prediction. It will expect more of what I did. So in order to stop the anxiety, the fear, the frustration, the lack of achievement of goals moving forward, we got to stop that coding and recode it. That's why this podcast is called Always Winning, because it is a neuroscience principle. Neurons that fire together wire together. Number two, limbic memory loops, limbic system. The limbic system controls continuity, peace. It's tied to the vagus nerve, which gives you optimization of function. I lose this all the time and have to recenter myself. Write that down. In order to optimize your life, you're going to get off center. Guilty. All of us do. So how do you recenter? Limbic memory loops. Your emotional history becomes your emotional reflex.
Yeah.
So if you've learned to respond on the road, for example, when someone cuts you off with the finger, then that emotional history becomes your emotional reflex. Guilty. I needed to stop doing that. This also ties spiritually into the law of reciprocity. Real funny story. I used to do this all the time to people 10 years ago. I haven't done it recently for many years, but I used to flip people off all the time. I used to get so angry on the roads. Guilty. As becoming an emotionally regulated coach, I'm guilty of my own sin, if you will. It's like I do the things I don't want to do. So, but learning human behavior, the guy cut me off the other day, and I thought to myself, man, instead of reacting, I responded with an emotional new history, a new reflex, saying, I bet you the guy's got a lot on his mind. 90% of us do drive unconsciously. 85% optimization, 82% you are operating unconscious through the day. The remaining, 10, 12, 5, 6 is conscious. In fact, you're totally conscious listening to me now. This is what number 3 is about. Cortisol thinking. Cortisol generates in the gut. So if you're uneasy all the time, cortisol levels will suppress. Stress will suppress cortisol level. Stress shuts down the prefrontal cortex by 30%, Tim, according to Yale studies. 30%. Cerebral frontal cortex is responsible for impulse control, focus, and forethought. So you have predictive coding, limbic memory, cortisol thinking. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to add in here because you're talking about the gut influencing cortisol, influencing decision making. So
That's right.
if you're not exercising, if you are not eating healthy,
Stress
if you have
reducers.
bad gut health,
Biology, pathogens.
your
You got it.
decisions are.
That's right.
More-
When you come into our clinic, first thing we start with is medical history. Why? I had a businesswoman working for one of the tech companies here. She goes, "Why are you? I'm here to increase my leadership. Why are we talking about my diet?" I said, "Do you believe food affects mood?" There was about a 30-second pause. She goes, "I apologize. Continue." My background in kinesiology and human performance, training pro athletes, I have a very high understanding, a knowledge base of foods that affect moods. For example, yesterday I had too much coffee. My daughter was like, what's wrong with you? We got into a little tiffy last night. She goes, "Well, you've been sensitive all day." I go, "Okay, thank you for letting me know that. I don't want to argue at 10:30 at night. My norepinephrine levels are completely depleted. Daddy needs rest." And she wanted to keep going, and it turned into a thing with my wife and the whole thing. And I said, "I apologize." So I processed it this morning. Instead of getting angry or throwing some male chauvinistic crap around like this is my house, I pay the bills here. Now, all of that low level thinking, gentlemen, just to throw that in. And I used to do that stuff, so I understand it. My father used to do it. Remember, it was genetic. It was genetic emotional history. Became my emotional reflex. So don't be so hard on yourself coming into New Year. There's old behaviors that were hewn from your DNA. They tie themselves through the DNA. So So I processed this morning. I had too much. I had different coffee yesterday. This is how sensitive you can become to optimization. We do this with pro athletes because they're paid to perform top of their game every game. In corporate America, you can do the same thing. And this is number 4, which I call identity bias. What I've always done begins to feel like who I am. What I've always done begins to feel like who I am. So now you've got an identity issue wrapped in your behavior by snapping the finger. Well, I'm Italian. This is how I am. And, I came from the inner city and I'll always be aggressive. And those are understandable, but no longer acceptable because they're looping, right? Old pattern are biological, not moral. Go easy on yourself. Quit bringing in the nighttime hours where you go, I'm such an ass. I'm such a jerk. I got it. Because some people do that. And the ones that do, I want to salute you because that's an identifying unction that you're getting spiritually, emotionally, logically, to where you are trying to create new adaptation.
Yeah.
Make sense, Tim?
Absolutely.
Okay. Closing up
Well,
here. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add in here because identity is so important. I mean,
Huge.
when I worked with you and we shed away everything else that really wasn't me, the job, the occupation, the title, that's not your identity.
True.
And
Hard
you
to do
gotta
that.
you gotta be free from that.
Yeah. Well, that's an
And
easier, gentle on him, Tim. Gentle on him. You got to be free. There's a process to getting free of that because most people have been working on that pattern for decades, So it's unlearning
yes.
synoptic disconnection to synoptic fusing. So you're and this cycle takes about 126 days. In fact, we're running a promo right now. I do a 90-day coaching program come first of the year. We're doing kind of a reduced package, We're going to give 50% off the assessment. If there's something that you're not seeing, data brings peace. Remember, knowledge brings peace. So you can find out what these behavioral loops are by one assessment. We've got the best in the world. This is psychometric analytics at a whole other level. It's not Myers-Briggs or DISC or that stuff can be gamed. You can actually lie to yourself. Our stuff, you can't. It will kick you back and force you to get very truthful with who you are believing you are. Beliefs create behavioral change, and automatically it stops the looping. So to your point, I'll keep going. I just want to interrupt that. Sometimes you can't stop. This process takes about 126 days of refiring.
Yes, and I get very passionate about it. And yes, have the force of forgiveness and grace on yourself.
Yes.
And
I'm teaching my son, be gentle with yourself. He's having an OCD loop right now, and he's fighting in his head. That is governed by dopamine, which is a lot of things that a lot of us are going through are from pathogens. They're biochemical. They're not even spiritual. They're not moral. You're just chemically off. So we can isolate that overnight and fix it. Little blood work, little neural mapping. And, I had one lady come to us last year. She never made more than $50,000 a year. She doubled. She's got $100,000 increase now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable what happens when you start believing in you and you get a hold of these loops that keep you stuck.
Yes. Yeah. And, from a client, when I started working with Ron, it was the first time after I took the assessment, the data is just like, wow, this is powerful. And then his expertise in guiding, he's like, your identity, you're a nurturer.
Yeah.
You are a nurturer.
Yeah.
And I have 4 daughters. And when he said it, I could quickly look back and see the points in my life where, wow, yeah, that is who I am. I've never had it called out that way. And that's separate from being, such and such title at such and such company or whatever the case may be. No. I'm a human being. And I am always being nurturing in all relationships with my wife, with my kids. Of course, I'm a believer. So with God and my community, the impact I've made in my community in the last 2 years is insurmountable compared to the time before that.
Because you
And
started being empathetic and nurturing towards others because you found out it was your superpower.
correct.
But let them know the main person you were not nurturing,
Me.
yourself.
I
So
was not
once
nurturing
you
myself.
find these loops that keep you stuck, let's talk about these 4 loops, which I took you through. Thought loop.
Yeah.
Thought loop is number 1. So fear creates a neural pathway. So if you don't understand what you behaviorally are a superpower in, that's given by our assessment that we're given 50% off for. Just first, but you got to get in by the end of the year. You don't know how to stop the thought loop, and you don't know what neural pathway is firing.
Yeah.
You can figure this out through life. You don't have to do anything. You can just let life deal you the deck of cards. Here's my saying to people who think like this. It's a limiting belief. Why wait for the green light from anybody when you have the power to make your own intersection?
Ooh, I love that.
You have the power to change. That's
Yes.
my wife's voice over and over. Sometimes these processes that we've grown up with are so embedded into the cortexes of the brain, these neural pathways, that you cannot just stop it. I know there's funny comments about, well, if you really want to change, you would change. Yes, but there are so many cofactors now. Number 2 is the emotional loop. So you have thought loop, and then you have emotional loop, the loops that keep you stuck. The body memorizes the fear in an emotion.
Mm.
And so identifying that I'm in an emotional state right now, adding in heart coherence, which is previous events that we've taught in, take a look at those when you can. We're going to be talking about them all through 2026. Leads to behavioral loops. Beliefs create behaviors. Okay, so if I am behaving a certain way, I got to rewind back to a belief system. Like, for example, arrogance, or there's a huge one that I'm talking about right now, entitlement. I felt both of those behaviors before. Who hasn't felt entitled, or who hasn't felt, challenged in some of these areas? And the memory, the action repeats what feelings predict. That's called a behavioral loop. So to interrupt those, we have a tool here. I'm not going to tell you what it is. All right, I will tell you. It's called cognitive replacement. You've heard me talk about it before, but it's an actual mental tool that you have now in your head, to where you're instantly able to trap that thought and go, I'm being a little arrogant here.
Yeah.
You just bump back off. You can actually say to the person, let me rewind. Let me rephrase that statement. I know you're triggered, and I know this is a sensitive issue. You're important. This situation is important. Just right now, I'm not mentally able to handle this. May we pick this up tomorrow? Yeah. It's showing, first of all, restraint. It's showing sensitivity to them. It's not dismissiveness, right? You're not dismissing them. You're not deflecting and trying to say, well, you did this, and that's not going to create leadership congruency. Yeah. Those are old behavioral loops. Actions repeat what feelings predict. So look for these things. And number 4 is identity loop. They're tied to the infrastructure of these 4 neurology of old patterns, right? So your identity loop, this cycle then says, just who I am. Yeah. It becomes, this is just who I am. And that right there is a limiting belief. It's not just who you are. You're way more than this. You're a husband, a father, a wife, a brother, a sister, a friend, a VP, a CEO, a visionary, a author, a forerunner, and so you're going to be hit. To try to do that alone is insanity. Yeah. 2 is better than 1. Ancient biblical writings. When one is down, the other lift them up. Neuroscience has confirmed this. Because having a coach, therapist, priest, rabbi, somebody, mentor in your life actually disrupts these loops, and breakthrough begins when you interrupt the loop. This is the key fundamental all next year. If you don't focus on anything else, this is your New Year prescription. Neurology plus a little meditation. You could do scripture with this. You could do affirmations, I am lists. We work this. So let's wrap up next week, and next week we're off. And then Tim,
We'll
when
be
are we
back-
back on?
We'll be back next year.
Next year? Okay, first of the year. So first of the year, let's get into the prescription and work this thing. And then for those of you who are interested and you want to hit fast forward, take advantage of this opportunity. You know, talk to yourself by saying, I'm making a call to renew my mindset. My brain's not my enemy. It is simply waiting for a new script, right? You don't have to repeat the old patterns. You don't have to carry last year's anxiety. You can reset, rewire, and rebuild, because your mind was designed to renew. So transformation, you guys, requires measurement, and you cannot change what you cannot see. So we're going to, in this assessment, we're going to give you stress signatures, decision-making patterns. You're going to see emotional rhythms. I'm going to highlight your cognitive strengths. That's the difference between having a psychologist and an executive advisor or a coach, is that we capitalize on your strengths, not your liabilities. Right, Tim?
Yep.
Your
Absolutely.
behavioral blind spots is huge for my executive leaders, you know, and then of course your pathway. So if you're ready to make a year's difference, not by chance but by design, DM us and we'll give you the complimentary 15-minute session along with 50% off and sow our first seed into you.
Sounds good.
Awesome, Tim.
Sign up now.
Have a Merry Christmas, you guys. Happy New Year, and know that I love you. We bless you, and that you can do anything you set your mind and heart to, but they got to be connected. Always winning with Coach and Ron.